but it wasn't always easy for you. You had paralyzing stage fright, but you talk about people needing encouragement and a little kind of
Yeah.
fill them with positivity, but you needed that for yourself. How
Mhm.
did you go from this stage fright to performing for Fortune 100 companies and even international audiences? What was it that for you flipped the switch?
I was very afraid every time I got on stage.
What were you
And
afraid would happen?
afraid of how I'd be perceived, judgment from the audience, things going wrong. There's a sort of frame that you live in when you present yourself as a magician or a mentalist, which is that you can do anything. I mean, that's like the illusion that we're trying to create, really big picture. If you look at a mentalist and a good one, you sort of want to believe that that person could do anything. When in reality, if you're building that illusion with sleight of hand or magic techniques or psychology or other sort of tools and ideas, you're living with a sort of facade, and at any point that could crack in a way that like the audience can see through you, and you feel very like judged. And so, on the one hand, while you're creating this persona and this like illusion for the audience and this sort of fantasy of like being able to do anything, you're living in like a way that you sort of know that like this could crack at any moment. And I don't pretend about that. I don't pretend to have any kind of powers or supernatural abilities. As far as I'm concerned, this is all for entertainment, and I'm doing my best to create the illusion of something fun for the audience. But when that cracks, it's a very uncomfortable feeling for the performer. And so, yeah, that was it. You know, just being on stage, knowing that at any moment anything could go wrong.
Right. Well, you've alluded to it, but I'll put some words to it and tell me if this speaks to you.
Mhm.
Magic can be a metaphor for personal or organizational transformation. Can you tie that, but walk that bridge for us?
I have a definition of magic that I really like, and I'm not the first person to say this, but magic is something like putting more preparation into a moment that anybody else would reasonably expect. And if you want to really simplify that, it's magic's not about the tricks. It's about the way you can make somebody else feel. And so whether you're able to create a feeling of wonder and amazement and importance and surprise inside of somebody with a magic trick, or just with like sincere care and attention and thought and attention to detail, it comes back to the same thing as how can you make a person feel in a moment.
Yeah.
And so I often share, one of the people in my life who taught me the most about magic, when you look at it that way, are not the magicians I learned from. It was my grandma, who just had this way of like, she lives in France and I grew up in America. And so I got to see her once a year. But every time my family and I, when would go to see her, she had this way of just making you feel so important and so special. And she would prepare the whole experience, right? They'd show up to pick us up at the airport dressed like they were going to church. My grandpa in a suit, my grandma in a dress. They'd take us home and we would be treated to three-course meals a day, like three-course meals a day, right? Like beautiful preparation. They had these trips to the mountains, trips to the beach planned for us. My grandma even signed me up to circus camp. And so even though I only got to see this important person in my life once a year, the way that she showed up in those moments just felt like pure magic. And so whether or not you're a magician or you do tricks, I don't think that's the point. I think the point is, what tools do you have at your disposal to create magic for someone else? Because magic's not about the tricks. It's about the way you can make somebody else feel.
Yeah, and I think much of our audience who's chiming in, they your keynotes or experiences just like you had with your grandmother.